Hello and welcome. My name's James and I'm the candidate coach. And today we are coming to you live for our workshop. It is great to be with you wherever you are dialing in, logging on around Australia, around the world. Thank you very much for joining us. A reminder that depending on which platform you're watching this on, you can ask me questions and I'll answer them. We'll read them out live if they're good questions because we are streaming to you live today. So thanks very much for joining us. We've got a great topic today, which is how to give great answers to interview questions. Now, our previous workshop, if you attended, was on how to prepare for an interview. We talked about all the things that you need to do, how you do the right research, how you prepare your documents, what you need to take to the interview, how you need to act in the interview room, things like your body language, your eye contact. But we didn't talk about specifically how to answer interview questions. The reason we didn't is it's its own workshop itself. There's a lot to go into in terms of constructing a great answer for interview questions. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk specifically about how do you craft a really good answer to interview questions. In my experience, this is the one area that job seekers don't spend enough time on. They spend a lot of time on their resume and cover letter. They spend a lot of time researching the company. They even might spend a lot of time researching their interview, but they don't spend enough time actually practicing their answers to interview questions. You think you know how to answer a question. You may be a bit too embarrassed to ask somebody to practice with you. And so when it actually comes to the day, it comes to the interview and you are asked the question, a lot of candidates fall flat on their face because they haven't practiced. And each time you practice your interview question answer, it gets better. So if you practice it 3 times, it's 3 times better. If you practice it 10 times, it just gets better and better and better. So I'm going to be sharing my screen with you a lot today, as you'll see now. If I do look like I'm looking over here a bit, that's because it's my presentation screen. But that's what we're going to do. We are going to talk about how do we give great answers to interview questions. So a little bit about me to begin with. My name's James. I'm the founder of The Candidate Coach. I've been coaching job seekers for a long time now. Throughout my career, my other role is a director of a recruitment agency where I've been at for nearly 20 years. And in that time, this is my best estimate. The numbers could be much higher than this, but I estimate I've conducted over 3,000 interviews, conducted over 600 group assessments, and placed well over 1,000 people into jobs. And we built The Candidate Coach about 5 years ago because we just felt that there was a real lack of relevant training, particularly for Australian job seekers. So that's me. As I say with all of my coaching, when you are getting coaching on anything to do with looking for work, whether it's your resume, whether it's your cover letter, whether it's your LinkedIn profile, whether it's your interview performance, you are going to get a wide range of opinions. It's like if you're on Google and you Google chocolate cake recipe, you will probably get, 20,000 chocolate cake recipes. They will all make a chocolate cake, but they all use different ingredients and different methods, and are just all slightly different. At the end of the day, they will make a cake, so they're all valid. It's a bit the same with advice in terms of looking for work. Everybody has an opinion. Some opinions you should listen to more so than others. But what I'm going to share with you today, again, is my opinion. Now, someone else's opinion might be different to mine. That doesn't mean that I'm right, they're wrong, I'm right. You need to consider all opinions when you're going for work. My advice is generalist in nature. It's not specific to a particular job type. So today, let's just talk about a little bit of housekeeping, just in case every now and then something goes wrong. If I lose power, if there's a lightning strike, if I do drop off at any time, I will certainly rejoin. As I said, we're taking questions. Ask me questions. Use the comments box. Take lots of notes. And if something you want to watch again happens in the video, you can do so. We are streaming on our YouTube channel. You can jump on and watch it all again. You can share it with a friend if you like. My first question for you today is, what is the most common interview question in the world? Do you know what the most common interview question in the world is? Feel free to type it in as I'm giving you a moment to think about this, because this question is maybe not as obvious as you think. This question I ask every single candidate, and I ask every single candidate at the start of a phone interview. I ask every single candidate at the start of a face-to-face interview. I ask every candidate in a group assessment this question as well. The question simply is, tell me a little bit about yourself. Now, this question doesn't sound, I guess, overly official, does it? It doesn't sound like a really serious interview question, but it is the type of question that you need to be really prepared for. So I want you to do the following. I want you to get out a piece of paper or open up another window on your computer, and I want you to write this down. So write down what you're seeing on your screen now. I want you to write down, first of all, your name. I want you to write down, and don't write down the answer to these, write down overview of your work history. Write down number 3, your top 3 skills, and number 4, the type of work that you're looking for. So write down just what you're seeing on the screen now. Don't give answers to those statements because that will take you a little bit of time, and I actually want you to do that, but outside of this workshop. So what I've asked you to do here is to create what we call an elevator pitch. We want you to create an elevator pitch. Now, an elevator pitch gets its name from pretty much an example of how much time do you have in an elevator with someone. So from a interviewing perspective, imagine if you had an interview this afternoon on the 30th story of a Melbourne high-rise business building. And when you got to the address, you walked in, you pressed number 30 on the lift, and you got in to the lift and it was empty. But just as those doors were closing, someone said, "Stop, hold the lift." And in walked the person you were meeting. And they said, "Oh, hello. Just while we're going up in the lift, why don't you tell me a bit about yourself?" So you've got that time as the lift's going up, let's say 30 to 60 seconds. So it's called an elevator pitch based on that. So an elevator pitch is a brief, persuasive statement, which is going to come in handy during the recruitment process. Because the most common interview question in the world is, tell me a little bit about yourself. The best answer to this question is your elevator pitch. When I ask somebody, tell me a little bit about yourself, I get a whole range of responses. I get candidates saying, "Oh, well, they'll just talk only about work, or they'll only talk about outside of work, or they won't know where to start," and they come across as unprepared. Whereas if you have got a well thought out elevator pitch here, you're giving yourself a great opportunity to impress me straight away. So let's go through how we actually create an elevator pitch. So as I said, this is an elevator pitch. We've got our name. That's pretty easy. We've got an overview of our work history. Now, overview, not detail, just overview. Your top 3 skills and the type of work you're looking for. Now, these things as well, they might change a little bit depending on who you're speaking to, the type of work you're going for. So, for example, you might be happy to work in customer service. You might be happy to work in administration. So you might highlight different skills at different points in time. But generally speaking, this is what we do. So how do we go about that? Well, here's an example of one I've created earlier. So you need to go away and do this. You need to go away and write down your answers and rewrite it. So this is how I would give an elevator pitch for myself if I was looking for work. If someone said, "Tell me a bit about yourself," I'd say, "My name's James. And for 15 years, I've worked in recruitment, beginning in a recruitment consulting role before moving on to management and then onto my current position, which is being a director. My top skills include interviewing candidates in a way that uncovers their true motivation, public speaking and presenting, as well as coaching and training candidates to ensure they're giving themselves the best chance of getting a job. I'm currently looking for a new role where I can focus more of my time on training, coaching, and assisting candidates as opposed to being a recruiter." So by me giving you my elevator pitch, you suddenly have quite a bit of insight into me, what I'm looking for and what I'm good at. Now, my interview pitch there, my elevator pitch is quite impressive, but don't be intimidated. I've worked on it a lot and I'm an experienced recruiter and coach. There is no reason, though, why you can't get your elevator pitch to this level. There is no reason why you can't, after today's workshop, go away, go home, write those things down, and you tailor it. So I've crafted that slowly and you edit it. And then when you've got it right, you need to start using it. So I want you to rewrite your elevator pitch until you feel that it is perfect. It's not just going to happen once. Once you've done that, you've got it to a point where that's really good. I'm really happy with it. I want you to print it out. I want you to stick it on your fridge at home. Have a copy on your desk. Have a copy on your bench at home. Save it in your phone. The reason I want you to do that is because if somebody calls you for an interview on the phone and says, hey, can you tell me a bit about yourself? Your brain's going to go, this is it. This is my elevator pitch. This is when I need to use my elevator pitch. And then you're going to go, oh, what is my elevator pitch? But if you've got it saved on your phone, if you've got it printed out on the desk in front of you, you can look down at it, you can start to read it back, and it will come back to you. You want to avoid those, those moments where you have that brain freeze. But use your elevator pitch. We are creating it so that you can use it. All right, standing out interview. I've just got one main rule for you today, and that is this: preparation is key. Now, we talked about this in our other interview training video, and I know what you're probably thinking. You're probably thinking, James, that sounds really, really boring. Preparation is key. But I guarantee you that if you do the preparation, then you are going to significantly improve your chances of getting the job. So let's talk about preparing for giving specifically good answers to interview questions. So to begin with, we need to work out, well, what's the type of interview question? And there are several different types, but generally most things boil down to two types of interview questions: behavioral-based questions and technical-based questions. These are the two main types of interview questions. So let's have a look. So first of all, oops, that's bumped off my screen a bit. Behavioral questions. So in behavioral questions, we are focusing on how you've handled various situations in the workplace. And what do they reveal about your character traits, your abilities, and your skills? So for example, and these are questions that you would have heard a lot of, and they often start off with, tell me about a time, or can you give me an example of, or can you share with me? So for here, can you tell me about a time you gave great customer service? So it's a pretty general question, isn't it? You need to be able to give a specific example though. General question, specific example. This one is a bit more specific. Can you tell me about a time you disagreed with your manager? That is a specific question. And again, it requires a specific answer. So I just want to take a moment here and actually ask you, just think to yourself, if you are asked these questions, can you answer them confidently straight away with a really strong example? If the answer is no, then you've got some work to do. And that's fine. That's what we're here to do today. But if you don't feel really comfortable with your answers to these two questions, then you need to go away and work on them. Even if you're going for a senior role, you still might get asked that customer service question, because we all work with people. We all work with customers. Or it could be, tell me about a time when you assisted a colleague. Telling me about a time where you disagree with your manager is a question I love to ask. I love to ask it for many reasons, because it's not a question that people generally like answering, but it gives me a great insight into, first of all, have you thought about how do you answer that question? Have you prepared for this interview? Everyone's had a disagreement with their manager. Some people just disagree in their mind and move on. That's fine. You can talk about that in your interview, but you need to be prepared to answer these questions. The best way to answer behavioral-based questions is to use the STAR technique. STAR. Now you can go and Google the STAR technique and you'll find lots of different articles on what it is and how to apply it. I'm going to show you in a practical way today how you can go about using the STAR technique. Each letter in the STAR technique stands for something. So S stands for situation. So I want to describe the situation. So if I'm asking you about a time where you disagreed with your manager, I want you to start off by describing the situation and when it took place. I then want you to explain the task. So explain the task and what was your goal. So what did you want to achieve out of the conversation with your manager when you disagreed? A is the action, and this is probably the really important part here, is what did you do? Provide the details about the action that you took. So for example, a time when you gave great customer service, the situation was this: I was on the phone with a customer. The task was that the customer's package hadn't arrived. The action I took was this. So A is the key step here. What did you actually do? And then R is the result. So what happened as a result of your action? What was the process? So let's have a look at this. Let's have a look at this in a real sense. When we're talking about the situations, we need to set the scene here. So again, if it's a customer that's a customer service role, and you're going to share an example of a customer that called in because their package hadn't arrived on time. We need to set the scene. So we want to be specific here. We don't just want to say, oh, there was a customer that called in because their package hadn't arrived. Give some more details. I was working on the phone. It was a Friday at 4 o'clock. It was late in the week. And I received a call from a distressed customer because a package hadn't arrived that they needed for Saturday morning. The package was this, and this. Give some context here. I'd really encourage you to Google storytelling. How can you tell a story in a really effective way? Story techniques are very, very appealing. But we want to set the situation here, and we want to go into detail, set the situation, set the scene really well. What was the task? So in this example, if we have a customer that's called in that's upset, describe the exact responsibility in the situation. I was dealing with the customer. It was my responsibility to resolve it. My manager was on another call, or they'd gone home from the day. But we want to make sure the hiring manager knows specifically what you were assigned to do here. Maybe your responsibility was always to deal with difficult customers. There wasn't an option for you to go to somebody else. There wasn't an option for you to pass this on. The task for you was to help this customer with their inquiry and to resolve the issue. So as I said, A for action, this is the key step here. So what did you actually do? So I'm going to read this out. This step is probably the most important part of the story. Here you explain how you handled the difficult situation or conquered the problem. Talk about whether you did it alone or as part of the team. What you're trying to communicate is your assessment of the situation and the response to the problem, as well as how you got the team involved. Share as many details as possible here. So what a lot of candidates do is they don't share enough details, but we want to share details. Avoid acronym and company-specific jargon. So in using my short example here of if you're in a customer service role and a customer called in with a problem, we need to go into details here about what steps we took. Don't be worried about giving a long answer to this question. You can always ask the interviewer, am I going into too much detail here? They will tell you if you are. So if you're worried about doing that, pause halfway through and ask. But most candidates, 9 out of 10 candidates, don't go into enough detail with regards to the steps that they took within the action. What did you actually do? Be specific here. Talk about the things that you did. And then finally, the result. Close the story with a positive outcome. Obviously, you're not going to share an example here for most questions that have as a negative outcome. So talk about the result. If it was that the customer's package arrived, just in time because you did this, and this, and they then sent through an email to you and gave a 5-star Google rating saying how happy they were, talk about it. That's the result of the action that you took. But don't just talk about what you did, talk about what it then led to. So let's look at this in terms of another example. Let's pretend, and this is a nurse. We're going to use an example here of a nurse going for a nursing job. Describe a time when you handled a difficult situation at work. How did you react? So this is how a nurse answered this question. In my last job as a night nurse, one of my colleagues quit after securing a job with a top private hospital. Though I was managing a ward full of patients, I was assigned to one patient who didn't want to be admitted. He wanted to bolt out of his room. I made myself available to the patient, discussed with him the reason he was being admitted, and assured him that he would receive 24/7 attention and good care. The patient finally calmed down and agreed to spend the next 3 days under my observation. He was discharged on the 3rd day, and the wife personally thanked me for handling someone she knew to be extremely stubborn and difficult. This is a really solid answer. This is a wonderful answer. So let's break it down though. In the red, we have done the S here. We've got the situation. So the situation was I was a night manager and one of my colleagues had quit. The task was that this person was assigned to a patient who didn't want to be admitted. So that's the task. I've got to admit a patient who doesn't want to be admitted. The action in the green was making themselves available to the patient, discussing the reasons, so on and so forth. And then the result was on the 3rd day, the patient was discharged. And the wife personally thanked the nurse. So you can see that in action. S is red, the T is in the blue, the A for action is in the green, and the R is the purple there, the result of what's happened. So at first it looks like a short answer, doesn't it? It's just kind of one paragraph there, and it's very succinct. You might most people would struggle to give an answer that is this succinct, but this is a good example for me to share with you of describing the situation, the task, the action, and the result. So go away and use the STAR technique. Okay, so there we've talked about behavioral-based questions, which are the most common and probably the ones most people struggle with, because you need to provide those examples. You need to talk about the situation, the task, the action, the result. You need to do so well. You can go away and Google these types of questions. So you need to have examples, I think, always for, a time that you've worked in a team that had a great outcome, a time when you worked in a team that had a poor outcome, a time where you deal with a difficult customer, a time where you disagreed with your manager, your greatest achievement at work. When someone says, what was your greatest achievement at work? If you got an employee of the year, don't just say that was your greatest achievement. Talk about why. What was the situation? What did you do throughout the year? What were the actions that you took? What was the result of becoming employee of the year? Go into those details there. When you practice giving answer to behavioral-based interview questions, what you will notice is that each time you give the answer, it probably should get a little bit better. The details should get a little bit better. You'll actually start to recall more information about the situation each time you've done it. But if you've never practiced it, it's a huge risk. It's a huge risk turning up to interview, never having given those answers before. Okay, moving on. Let's look at the second main type of interview questions, and they are what we call technical interview questions. So technical interview questions focus on the skill, the qualification, and the experience required to do the job. So a couple of examples here. Tell me about the accounting software packages you are most familiar with. Or for a sales role, what sales methodology do you find to be most effective? So here we've got specific questions, and every role, every industry is going to be, very, very different. So that first question there, for example, tell me about the accounting software packages you are most familiar with. We're going to be talking about a technical answer here. We're going to be talking about MYOB. That's an accounting software that you might have used. But we need to talk about it in detail. We don't want to say I've used MYOB software. We want to say where we've used it, when we've used it, how we've used it, what version we use of it, what we like about it, what we find challenging with it. So the important part of the technical interview question is to focus on actually answering the question. So if I've asked you what accounting software packages you are familiar with, focus on answering that. Don't get distracted and go off on tangents. We want to provide details. So we can use the STAR technique. So if I've said, tell me about the accounting software that you've used, we can talk about the situations that we've used it in, the tasks that we've been using it for, the actions, and the results of using it. That's a wonderful way. So if you can really familiarize yourself with the STAR technique, you can apply it to nearly all interview questions. Or the W, the who, what, why, when, where, we've used it. So who do we use it with? What do we use it for? Where do we use it? When do we use it? And why? But again, most candidates here with interview questions go too light on the detail. I would rather you give too much detail and then occasionally pause and say to the interviewer, am I giving you too much detail? They will tell you if you are or if you need to move on. So STAR technique, or who, what, why, when, or where. We also need to give further detail. So again, on my second point there, or ask if it is okay to do so. If we're talking about examples of when we used MYOB software, you can say to the interviewer, do you mind if I give you a further detail just to highlight my experience with using MYOB software? The interviewer will say sure, or that's not necessary. But if they say sure, and you give further detail, you're just elevating your answer further and further. And as you elevate your answers further, you're elevating your suitability for the role further and further. Try to relate the answer to the job or the company that you're interviewing with. So this one here is a great way for you to make that link. If an organization, and again, coming back to our accounting software question, if an organization is asking you about an accounting software, that's because they use it. And so in that example, it's quite relevant. But for some others, it might not be so obvious. But if you've done some good research into the company, into the job, and you can relate your interview question back to that, then you're doing extremely well. Okay, how to deal with nerves and anxiety at interview. I'm going to play a video for you now. I just need to make sure that we can. Just going to make sure that I can share my audio with you today. No, it doesn't look like we can. I will drop into the chat function how you can deal with nerves and anxiety in your interview. We have a whole video on this on our platform. I apologize that it won't play through the workshop today. So in summary for today, though, preparation is key, isn't it? It is absolutely vital. And that's what I said in all of my pre-interview workshops. It's your friend, and preparation you can do. So I want to ask you a question. What I've talked to you about today, can you go away and do it? The answer is yes. It's whether you choose to or not. It's often not the best educated candidate that gets the job. It's often not the best, most experienced candidate that gets the job. It's the candidate that presents themselves best at interview. You can actually leapfrog over candidates with better skills, better qualification, and better experience by being a better prepared candidate. It won't always happen. But again, even if you do have great skills and great qualification, if you are not doing the preparation for interview, you are taking a huge risk. And going for a job is not something that you want to take risks on. All right, so we've now got an opportunity for questions. I'm going to stop the recording because sometimes people ask personal questions. Pop your questions into the chat function. Feel free to connect with me directly. There's my email address on the screen there. My name is James Whittingham. You can obviously see that too. Find me on LinkedIn and follow the Candidate Coach on LinkedIn as well. But we'll stop recording now. Thanks very much for joining today.